people have just been wrestling for a long time in the US to figure out. We can see the problem, we can name the problem. Certainly as someone who's gone back and forth between nonprofits and not nonprofits, being in a nonprofit now, I can definitely feel the problem every single day in our work, in my bones, in how we move at times, but we haven't figured out how to do it in a way that really does keep people who are most impacted by the issues at the center and in leadership and resourced to do the work and keep the work accessible and understand and actualize the reality that it's going to take millions of people to make the change that we want to make in our world.
Our framework is around really recognizing the limits of the nonprofit structure and the way it pushes organizations to be hierarchical, undemocratic, led by white people with educational privilege, and to say, what can we do to create a structure that's really kind of turning that on its head and really imagining a different kind of change.
We don't want to argue for some pure space where we can know that the political work we do is perfect and we'll have no unintended consequences and we'll have no harms. That's never going to happen. And I think sometimes we hold up a false model of that pure space and we measure our failures against those, against that model. And I think we want to be, we want to be experimental and thoughtful at the same time, right? So we want to think like, what does the nonprofit status help us do? And what does it keep us from doing? And when we pair it with something that's not incorporated as a nonprofit, what can that work do? What can that autonomous grassroots organizing do? What are its limits? And how do we think about complements back and forth? So ultimately I want the nonprofit form to fall away along with the nation state form.
I was very much inspired by the fact that Insight made a conscious decision to not become a nonprofit, made a conscious decision to not hire staff, made a conscious decision to not have a physical office. And the reasoning and rationale behind it, which is that we wanted to focus our energy on building a movement, not on building an institution. And we also wanted to focus our work on actually putting the safety of women of color and trans people of color at the center and thinking about what it would take to actually achieve that, as opposed to becoming bogged down in deliverables and theories of change and framing our work in ways that funders would understand and appreciate and continue to fund, and then creating situations where then individuals' salaries and livelihoods were tied up with how we did the work or where we did the work or how well funders appreciated the way we did the work. And that really helped me transform my vision around the pitfalls of nonprofits and how they shape the way movement happens.
In the face of this awareness that nonprofitization has really contained and harmed our movements and undermined our power, people are trying a lot of different things, right? So there's some people who've done their work never using the nonprofit form, right? So people who have just been doing volunteer-based work, been building local community organizations that don't take philanthropic funding, that if they need resources, fundraise out of everyone, passing the hat, that kind of have a deep grassroots, shared leadership model that isn't about an executive director and a fancy office and all of that. That work is ongoing. Tons and tons of movements have centered that strategy, and that remains really centrally important. There's also a set of groups that are trying to use the nonprofit form and resist a lot of nonprofit norms. So, inside nonprofits operating as a collective, having non-hierarchical pay, not hiring people based on only having educational privilege, centering or requiring POC, people of color leadership and in hiring. There's a lot of work like that to try to democratize existing nonprofit spaces and drastically shift away from kind of the corporate norms that are the way that most nonprofits work.
We have to shift our funding base, our constituent base, our vision to be shaped around the things we know are most critical and most provocative, and our community structures so that we can take care of each other without it being dependent on rich people.